Welcome to Chapter 15, Lugal's coup attempt. Enhanced General Lugal leads armed soldiers confronting the Partnership Council in a military coup. Should succeed tactically, enhanced warriors are vastly superior. Fails politically, not through military defeat, but through constitutional resistance. Baseline populations refuse subordination despite a capability disadvantage. Enhanced populations split. Hybrid populations mediate. Korrath trained Lugal. Now, the student watches apply lessons perfectly while violating values completely. This is the story of how military capability doesn't equal political authority, and how democracy requires constraining strength. Let's begin. Chapter 15, Lugal's coup attempt. The consolidation argument. Enhanced Military Command Center, Uruk. Dawn, 6 months after Sherer's death. The command center occupied fortress architecture that Zephyrus had explicitly designed for enhanced military coordination, high ceilings enabling quantum communication displays that baseline vision processed inadequately, acoustic properties channeling sound so enhanced hearing detected whispers across chamber distances that baseline ears required shouting to hear, spatial layout organized for enhanced cognition processing multiple simultaneous data streams that baseline processing handled sequentially requiring physical reorganization that enhanced coordination avoided through cognitive capacity exceeding spatial constraint. Lugal stood on the center platform, surrounded by 73 enhanced commanders representing Uruk's complete military leadership. 47 years old. Korrath's best student over 2 decades of training had transformed natural advantages into systematic tactical dominance. Survivor of the 2834 massacre that had killed 47 baseline humans during border conflict, when overwhelming force had produced a decisive victory, preventing future conflict, exactly as the teacher had promised military efficiency would accomplish through accepting biological reality that partnership governance denied politically, while bodies demonstrated absolutely. Except that the partnership had called it a massacre rather than military efficiency and had imposed constraints rather than commendations and had required baseline approval for operations despite baseline commanders processing tactical situations more slowly than combat demanded. When decisions occurred in milliseconds, cognition was handled instantly, but baseline processing required seconds, making institutional equality practically deadly when speed determined survival. Biology is allocated selectively. 18 years since the massacre that the partnership called an atrocity. 18 years of military reforms attempting to manage enhanced dominance through institutional oversight that biology made inadequate. Oversight committees. Ethics training. Proportionality requirements. Integrated command structures pairing enhanced tactical skill with baseline political approval. All attempting to constrain biological advantage that determine combat outcomes, regardless of constitutional frameworks, claiming equality transcended capability when violence demonstrated capability determined survival absolutely. Partnership governance has prevented military effectiveness for 18 years, Lugal began, voice carrying a command presence that warriors recognized instinctively as leadership deriving from capability rather than appointment, biological authority that institutions attempted to constrain through constitutional equality, which actual combat made theoretical when survival required capabilities that genetics allocated selectively. Reform after reform. Oversight after oversight. Ethics training teaches us to question instincts that save lives. Proportionality requirements constrain responses that biology enables to execute instantly. Integrated command structures requiring baseline approval for decisions, combat timing makes it impossible to delay without casualties resulting from delay that constitutional equality demands despite biology making delay deadly. He activated tactical displays that materialize throughout the chamber, holographic projections that enhance vision, processed as three-dimensional battlefield representations. In contrast, baseline vision would have seen two-dimensional confusion requiring sequential analysis that combat speed made impossible when tactics required simultaneous processing that cognitive advantages enabled naturally. Military performance data, 2834 to 2816 BCE, 18 years of partnership constraints. Enhanced lead operations. Casualties, enhanced, 127 across 18 border conflicts. Casualties, baseline enemy, 512, ratio 4.03:1 favorable casualties, baseline friendly, 89 from integrated units. Tactical success rate, 94%. Operations achieving objectives average combat duration, 4.7 hours per engagement. Strategic objectives achieved, 92%. Baseline-led operations, partnership requirement. Casualties, baseline commanders, 247 across the same conflicts. Casualties, baseline enemy, 298, ratio 1.21 to 1 barely favorable casualties, enhanced supporting, 34 from integrated units. Tactical success rate, 61%, operations achieving objectives average combat duration, 19.3 hours per engagement. Strategic objectives achieved, 67%. Integrated command, partnership standard. Casualties, combined forces, 412 total. Friendly fire incidents, 23 from coordination failures. Delayed responses, 847 instances requiring baseline approval. Average decision delay, 8.4 seconds, often fatal during combat. Constitutional compliance, 100%, all operations approved properly. Lives lost to compliance, 89 estimated from delay-related casualties. These numbers prove what 18 years of partnership constraints can't change, Lugal continued, displaying cycling through engagement data that mathematics made undeniable even when philosophy made interpretation debatable. Biology determines capability. Capability determines outcomes. Enhanced warriors win battles. Baseline warriors can't win because their processing speed doesn't handle tactical complexity. Baseline cognition operates sequentially. Enhanced coordination saves lives. Baseline coordination costs through delays that institutional equality requires, despite biology making delays deadly. Partnership pretends these differences don't exist while bodies demonstrate their existence absolutely. We bury enhanced soldiers killed by baseline commanders' delayed decisions. We explain to baseline families that their sons died because the integrated command required approval from commanders processing situations slower than combat, which permitted inadequate response. We maintain constitutional compliance that kills people through institutional delay when biology enables immediate response that survival requires, but that equality prevents us from executing without permission from populations whose processing speed makes permission arrive too late, saving lives that immediate response would preserve. Ninurta stood from the front section, 57 years old chronologically, appearing 40 physically through cellular repair, a military coordinator who'd survived more border conflicts than most warriors experienced through a career spanning 3 decades of continuous combat, proving biological advantages repeatedly through surviving situations that baseline warriors didn't survive through, lacking reflexes that genetics provided selectively. He'd supported Enkidu's consolidation amendment 4 years earlier, understanding that biological inequality produced practical consequences that political equality acknowledged but did not effectively eliminate. We've operated within partnership constraints for 18 years, Ninurta said, voice carrying authority that decades of combat command provided, regardless of political appointment. That partnership governance required validating military leadership through constitutional processes. Achieved 94% tactical success despite institutional handicaps that biology makes unnecessary. But friendly casualties increased by 340% when the partnership mandated integrated command, requiring baseline approval for tactical decisions that milliseconds determine outcomes for. We're killing our own soldiers through institutional equality that delays decisions biology enables us to make instantly. 8.4 seconds average delay, requiring baseline commander processing, a situation that enhances assessment and completes immediately. Doesn't sound like much, 8 seconds. Until you're standing on a battlefield watching an enhanced warrior waiting for baseline approval to execute a maneuver that saves the unit, but that delay makes it lethal because the enemy doesn't wait for constitutional compliance before attacking, the advantage that hesitation creates. He pulled up specific engagement from 3 months prior, border skirmish with raiding force where integrated command had required baseline approval before enhanced warriors could respond to a tactical situation that combat timing made urgent. Engagement 2816-3C, border raid response. Timeline. 0 o'clock, raid detected by enhanced scouts, processing visual data instantly. 0:03, enhanced tactical assessment complete, optimal response identified. 0:11, baseline commander receives report, information transmitted, Process sequentially 023, baseline commander request clarification, processing incomplete, additional data needed 031, enhanced commander provides clarification, delay accumulating 042, baseline commander approves response, constitutional requirement satisfied 043, enhanced unit executes maneuver, approval received, action initiated 047, enemy position changed, 42 seconds elapsed since detection 051, casualties sustained, 7 enhanced warriors killed by the enemy who'd repositioned during the approval delay. 42 seconds, Nanerta said, voice carrying the weight of command responsibility that required explaining deaths that biology could have prevented, but that institutions prevented through requiring approval that speed made fatal. 7 warriors dead. Not from enemy superiority. From institutional delay. Enhanced Scout detected the threat immediately. Enhanced Tactical Assessment identified optimal response within 3 seconds. Constitutional compliance required baseline approval, which took 39 additional seconds, during which the enemy repositioned, rendering an optimal response impossible because the situation changed during the delay. The integrated command required satisfying equality that combat made deadly. Those 7 warriors died serving partnership principles that got them killed. Their families were informed that constitutional compliance was maintained. That institutional equality was satisfied. That partnership governance functioned as designed. Functions that produce corpses through pretending biology doesn't determine capability when combat proves biology determines survival absolutely. The chamber absorbed casualties that data made concrete, not abstract numbers but dead warriors whose deaths partnership requirements had produced through institutional delay that biology made unnecessary but that political equality demanded despite biological inequality making demand deadly practically. Kamen stood from the middle section, 53 years old. This enhanced commander studied military history with a scholar's thoroughness rather than a warrior's focus on immediate tactical application, particularly interested in historical precedents where enhanced leadership had commanded baseline service demonstrating patterns that contemporary partnership attempted to prevent through constitutional constraints that history suggested were inadequate to prevent biological advantage from translating political authority eventually. Historical precedent provides context for understanding where military autonomy leads when enhanced advantages operate without partnership constraint, Kamen said, displaying a shift from current tactical data to archaeological documentation that order had preserved across centuries, making the past available for present analysis. Royal Cemetery at Yor, 2500 BCE. 316 years ago. Enhanced ruler died. 74 baseline humans followed into death through ritual service, 16 warriors, 6 craftsmen, 38 attendants, and 14 musicians. Archaeological evidence of complete enhanced dominance where baseline service was absolute, enhanced authority was unquestioned, biological hierarchy was formalized into cultural ritual, accepting death as appropriate service that subordinate populations provided superior leaders through believing subordination was natural rather than recognizing it was constructed through biological modification that partnership governance exists specifically preventing normalizing politically. He focused on a particular case study that order documentation preserved with complete biographical detail, making statistical casualties become personal tragedies that numbers abstracted but that individual lives made undeniable. Nin Bara, age 14, musician. Life timeline. Age 7, selected for musical training, parents honored by enhanced rulers' attention. Age 9, performing at royal ceremonies, service seen as a privilege. Age 11, designated potential death retinue member, highest honor culturally. Age 13, training specifically for funeral service, immortality through ruler's commemoration. Age 14, drinking poison willingly as ruler died, believing service was an honorable purpose. She believed it was honor, Kamen said quietly, letting documentation speak horror that shouting couldn't convey more powerfully than quiet presentation of a child dying willingly through cultural conditioning that made subordination seem appropriate rather than recognizing it was coercion that power structures normalized through making resistance dangerous while submission appeared honorable. Died willingly. Not forced. Not threatened and convinced through cultural conditioning spanning childhood that normalized enhanced superiority as biological reality, justifying baseline subordination unto death. That's what happens when enhanced consolidation is complete. Baseline populations serve enhanced leadership absolutely, believing subordination is appropriate to biological inferiority that culture teaches from childhood, making hierarchy seem natural rather than constructed through intervention, creating advantages that partnership governance exists specifically constraining politically, regardless of biological reality, making hierarchy efficient militarily. Lugal interrupted sharply, recognizing that a historical warning threatened undermining the military autonomy argument by suggesting that autonomy would inevitably lead to dominance, which Yor had demonstrated ended in baseline subordination. That's religious extremism, not military efficiency. Ritual death predated enhancement. Baseline rulers commanded death retinues throughout ancient history, regardless of biological modification. We're not proposing ritual death requiring baseline service unto mortality. We're proposing military autonomy that enables enhanced forces to operate without partnership constraints, currently costing lives, through institutional delays that integrated command requires. Yor is a cautionary tale about consolidation through religious authority, creating cultural conditioning that normalize subordination. We're discussing consolidation through biological necessity, when partnership governance prevents efficient defense and saves lives, while institutional equality costs through delays that combat makes deadly. Different justifications. Different contexts. Different outcomes despite both involving enhanced leadership that Yor achieved through religion, while military necessity would achieve through accepting biological reality. But pattern is the same. Command pressed, unwilling to accept the distinction that Lugal claims separated military efficiency from religious dominance when the outcome remained enhanced control regardless of the justification used, reaching the same conclusion. Enhanced leadership commanding baseline service. Biological advantage translates to political authority. Capability justifying hierarchy regardless of whether justification is religious ritual or military necessity, enabling efficient defense. Whether through religious conditioning teaching children that serving unto death is honorable or through military necessity teaching soldiers that dying through institutional delay is wasteful, the outcome is enhanced dominance that baseline populations serve rather than consent to meaningfully. You're citing military efficiency to justify what Yor achieved through religious conditioning, enhanced control that baseline populations support through believing subordination is appropriate to biological inferiority, whether that inferiority manifests as religious unworthiness or military inadequacy that capability differences create equally. The debate revealed division even within enhanced military leadership, some seeing autonomy as practical necessity given biological reality making partnership constraints deadly through requiring approval that combat timing made impossible providing without casualties resulting from delay, others recognizing autonomy as first step toward dominance that historical precedent showed ended in baseline subordination regardless of whether that subordination was religious like Yor or military like what Lugal proposed achieving through accepting biological advantage that partnership governance existed specifically constraining despite reality making constraint difficult when biology determined capability absolutely. The Akkadian Model. Strategic Planning Session. Lugal presented a historical framework for enhanced military autonomy, drawing from the Akkadian Empire as proof that enhanced consolidation through military superiority could produce stability rather than tyranny. Sargon's military dynasty, 2334 to 2154 BCE, 482 to 362 years ago. Sargon of Akkad, enhanced warrior, conquered Sumerian city-states through military coordination that baseline rulers couldn't match, founded an empire lasting 180 years through 4 generations, unprecedented stability for Bronze Age polities. Military efficiency enabled territorial control. Enhanced coordination enabled centralized governance. Strategic superiority enabled peace through dominance. Conquered cities accepted Akkadian rule because resistance was futile against the enhanced military capabilities of the Akkadians. The empire collapsed in the 4th generation, not through military defeat but through genetic dilution. Sargon's great-great-grandchildren retained partial enhancement, insufficient to maintain the military coordination the empire required. The biological advantage sustaining the empire eventually disappeared through the natural integration that the enhancement was designed to produce. But 180 years of stability proves enhanced military autonomy works when applied systematically rather than constrained by partnership institutions demanding consent from populations whose biology makes them militarily irrelevant to outcomes. Ninurta added an economic dimension. Akkadian military efficiency enabled trade network security spanning Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, enhanced coordination protecting caravans. Enhanced strategic planning prevents conflicts. Economic prosperity through military dominance that baseline military capability couldn't provide. That prosperity benefited both populations, enhanced rulers governing efficiently, baseline populations prospering through security, and enhanced military power guaranteed. Not tyranny. Not oppression. Hierarchy producing outcomes serving everyone better than partnership equality serves anyone. Akkadian counter-evidence. But Methuselah materialized from order observation position Enoch's son, documentarian whose role was preserving complete truth, including evidence contradicting enhanced consolidation arguments. Akkadian Empire's military efficiency produced prosperity for urban centers. But peripheral regions experienced extraction rather than prosperity. Enhanced coordination enabled the appropriation of resources from baseline communities to fund central administration. Military dominance prevented resistance that might have constrained exploitation. 14,000 copper miners died across the empire's territory extracting resources, enriching Akkadian trade networks. Not through enhanced malice but through enhanced coordination, enabling larger-scale extraction than baseline administration could manage. Enhanced military, preventing mining communities from resisting extraction rates that killed workers, might have constrained baseline governance. Sargon's empire benefited rulers and urban populations. Worked less well for baseline peripheral communities whose resources were appropriated efficiently through military dominance, preventing them from protecting their own interests against enhanced extraction. Lugal dismissed this: every empire extracts from the periphery to support the center. That's governance structure, not enhanced tyranny. Akkadian military efficiency made extraction systematic rather than chaotic. Baseline empires extracted too, just less efficiently. You're criticizing enhanced effectiveness at imperial governance, not enhanced malice in imperial structure. The coup planning. Secret military council, night. Lugal gathered the inner circle, 23 enhanced commanders representing the military elite who'd concluded partnership constraints prevented effective defense. Military autonomy proposal is simple: enhanced forces operate independently from partnership oversight when combat situations require immediate tactical response, baseline approval required for strategic planning but not tactical execution. Partnership governance is maintained for non-military domains. This isn't complete consolidation. It's not a political takeover. Is military necessity given biological reality that partnership acknowledges philosophically while preventing it from manifesting operationally? But Kasset enhanced administrator now 61 years old, who'd managed resource distribution during copper crisis and understood difference between efficiency and equity challenge from the position of institutional loyalty rather than biological advantage. Military autonomy sounds moderate. Reality is enhanced warriors operating without partnership constraint. Once military autonomy is established, military necessity expands to include civilian domains. Security concerns justify infrastructure control. Defense requirements justify resource appropriation. Tactical necessity justifies political authority. That's how the Akkadian Empire happened, military efficiency expanding into complete governance. Military autonomy is a gateway to full consolidation regardless of intentions. You're proposing exactly what Enkidu's constitutional amendment attempted 4 years ago through a different mechanism: enhanced control justified by biological advantage, constitutional equality abandoned through domain-specific exceptions that expand inevitably. Lugal replied, Enkidu attempted to formalize hierarchy constitutionally. Failed 73 to 92 votes. Partnership rejected capability-based segregation politically. But biology doesn't care about political rejection. Military domain forces confronting biological reality regardless of constitutional frameworks. Enhanced warriors still process faster. Still coordinate better. Still win battles, baseline warriors lose. Partnership governance doesn't change that, just prevents us from acknowledging it operationally. Military autonomy is accepting biological reality in a domain where biology determines survival. Not imposing hierarchy politically. Adapting institutionally to facts. Partnership can't change through voting. Death Pit's warning. Erebus materialized as an immortal observer whose role was warning against consolidation he'd predicted 5,000 years ago would produce precisely these crises. You're describing exactly how death pits happened. Enhanced ruler coordinating baseline service. Military necessity justifying enhanced command. Biological advantage translates to political authority. Ninbara died at 14, believing service to an enhanced ruler was an honor. That's a cultural outcome of military autonomy normalized across generations, baseline populations believing enhanced superiority is natural rather than recognizing it's constructed through biological modification. Partnership was supposed to constrain. You're not proposing immediate complete consolidation. You're proposing the first step toward consolidation that historical evidence shows ends in baseline subordination formalized culturally until baseline populations serve enhanced leadership believing service is appropriate to biological inferiority. Lugal countered, death pits was religious extremism by a single enhanced ruler. We're proposing institutional military autonomy across the entire enhanced military class. Distributed authority prevents single ruler tyranny. A professional military structure prevents religious extremism. Different context, different outcomes. Using a worst-case historical example to prevent practical adaptation is letting fear of hypothetical tyranny prevent necessary efficiency. Baseline discovery. Partnership Council intelligence. Mira discovered coup planning by accident rather than investigation. Enhanced military communications were intercepted by baseline engineers maintaining the infrastructure Zephyrus had built for enhanced capabilities, but that baseline maintenance was now accessible. 61 years old. Baseline engineer who'd succeeded Sheror as Partnership Council leader 4 years prior. Who'd spent an entire career maintaining systems designed for enhanced processing while working with baseline capabilities. Who understood both technical and political dimensions of biological inequality through lived experience rather than abstract philosophy. She brought evidence to the Emergency Partnership Council session, intercepted communications documenting Lugal's planning, casualty statistics justifying the autonomy proposal, Akkadian historical parallels, inner circle membership, and a timeline for implementation. The council chamber filled quickly. Baseline representatives were alarmed by enhanced military planning autonomy without partnership consent, and enhanced representatives were divided between supporting efficiency and maintaining constitutional frameworks. Hybrids recognized that military autonomy would exclude them entirely from a domain where the most significant advantages were decisive. Trade network collapse parallel. Tuvalkian presented an economic analysis showing how military autonomy would affect trade networks that partnership governance currently protects. Mediterranean trade networks operate across territories controlled by various polities. Partnership governance ensures Uruk's enhanced military protects trade routes serving both populations. Enhanced caravans coordinate faster. Baseline caravans develop local relationships. Both valuable. Both protected. Military autonomy means enhanced forces prioritize enhanced interests. Trade route protection favors enhanced merchants whose coordination enables larger operations. Baseline merchants lose security guarantees because military necessity doesn't justify protecting economically marginal operations when tactical resources are limited. The trade network collapse, 2200 BCE, 616 years ago, showed what happens when security fails during Late Bronze Age disruptions. Regional networks are fragmented. Local trade persisted, but long-distance commerce ended. Economic prosperity concentrated in protected regions while peripheral areas experienced collapse. Military autonomy enables the same pattern. Enhanced forces protect enhanced interests efficiently. Baseline interests become peripheral concerns addressed after enhanced priorities are secured. Not through enhanced malice but through military necessity, determining tactical priorities when autonomy eliminates partnership oversight, requiring equal consideration. Enkidu, now 74 years old, enhanced leader who'd proposed consolidation amendment 4 years prior and watched it fail, who'd governed continuously while baseline opponents had died and been replaced, added perspective from enhanced political leadership. Military autonomy is Lugal attempting through force what I attempted through constitutional amendment. Different methods toward the same goal, enhanced control in a domain where biological advantage is decisive. My attempt failed politically. His attempt could succeed militarily because the military domain is where partnership constraints are weakest. But success would destroy the partnership. Not immediately. Not completely. But military autonomy becomes precedent for enhanced autonomy in other domains where capability advantages exist. Economic efficiency next. Then, infrastructure optimization. Then, the administrative coordination. Each domain-specific autonomy is justified by a biological advantage in that domain. Eventually, enhanced autonomy everywhere despite constitutional equality requiring partnership consent nowhere. That's consolidation through institutional erosion rather than constitutional amendment. I oppose this not because I oppose enhanced control philosophically, but because attempting consolidation through military coup rather than political process destroys legitimacy that even enhanced governance requires for stability. The iron weapons crisis. Technology cascade complications. Prometheus materialized with evidence that iron weapons proliferation complicated the military autonomy proposal, technology he taught during the copper crisis now spreading democratically, enabling baseline military capability that made enhanced dominance less absolute. Iron democratization, 2820 to 2816 BCE. Taught iron during the copper crisis 8 years ago. Iron is abundant where copper is scarce. Iron techniques were more sophisticated than bronze techniques. Iron is accessible to baseline populations, whereas bronze is monopolized by enhanced wealth. 8 years of iron proliferation now show technology democratizing military capability. Baseline forces with iron weapons perform better against enhanced forces with bronze weapons. Material democracy partially compensating for biological hierarchy, baseline smiths developing techniques making iron perform nearly as well as bronze despite material inferiority. Hattusili and other baseline smiths trained thousands of people to create iron weapons. Baseline military forces are now equipped with democratized material, giving them tactical capabilities that the bronze monopoly previously prevented. Not equal to enhanced coordination, biology still determines processing speed, but less unequal than when material advantages are compounded with biological advantages. He showed combat effectiveness data. Enhanced versus baseline combat performance. Bronze versus Bronze Era, 2834 BCE, 4.03:1 casualty ratio favoring enhanced. Bronze versus Iron Era, 2820 BCE, 3.67 to 1 casualty ratio favoring enhanced. Bronze versus Iron Current, 2816 BCE, 3.21 to 1 casualty ratio favoring enhanced. Ratio declining as iron proliferates. Enhanced dominance remains decisive but decreasing. Material democratization through technology cascade enabled now constrains enhanced military advantage that Lugal wants to formalize through autonomy. The military autonomy proposal assumes enhanced dominance is permanent. Iron proliferation proves advantages are temporary, technology democratizing capability over time, even as biology maintains processing differences. The question is whether the partnership survives the transition period or whether enhanced forces formalize autonomy during the period when advantages are most significant, before material democratization equalizes capability further. Hattusili's perspective. Hattusili attended the council session. 52 years old now, baseline smith, whose iron dignity philosophy had been articulated at Scherer's funeral 4 years prior, whose iron weapons were enabling baseline military capability, Lugal's coup planning assumed didn't exist. Created 5,000 iron weapons over the past 8 years. Trained 300 baseline smiths in iron techniques. Equipped baseline forces throughout partnership territories with material that enhanced wealth monopolization in bronze. That's material democracy through technological accessibility. Baseline warriors fight enhanced warriors less unequally when both have quality weapons, even if biology maintains processing advantages. Iron doesn't eliminate enhanced superiority. Makes superiority less absolute. Less permanent. Less justifiable as a basis for military autonomy when material advantages are disappearing through a technology cascade. Lugal wants military autonomy, assuming enhanced dominance is an unchangeable biological fact. Iron proves advantages change through technology, even when biology doesn't. Partnership constraints that force both populations to share technology democratically prevent the emergence of a stronger monopoly in capability. Military autonomy eliminates constraint, enables enhanced monopolizing of future technologies, reverses the democratization trend represented by iron. The confrontation builds. Korrath's moral crisis. Korrath materialized facing a crisis of responsibility. His student was attempting a coup using principles Korrath had taught, which enabled consolidation he philosophically opposed. His guilt over the 2834 massacre was now compounded by the student applying lessons that produced the massacre to justify military autonomy that would enable more massacres without partnership constraint. 54,000 years old. Warrior who taught combat for millennia. A teacher who believed that strength must defend the weak. Immortal who'd created exactly the problem he tried to prevent, trained Enhanced Warrior so effectively that Enhanced Warrior now threatened partnership through the capability teacher had provided. He confronted Lugal privately before the coup could proceed. Teacher-student confrontation. I taught you strength without teaching wisdom about when strength shouldn't be applied, Korrath said, voice carrying guilt earned through watching students weaponize teaching. Taught you decisive victory prevents future conflict. Didn't teach you that decisive victory against weaker opponents creates subordination rather than peace. Taught you that the strong must defend the weak. Didn't teach you that enhanced strength defending enhanced interests while claiming to defend the weak is tyranny disguised as protection. You learned what I taught and applied it correctly. Produced outcomes I didn't intend, but that my teaching enabled. That's my failure, providing capability without an ethical framework to constrain it. Teaching how to win without teaching when winning serves justice versus when winning serves domination. Lugal replied without anger, respect for the teacher maintained despite philosophical divergence. You taught me everything you knew. Taught it excellently. I'm a better warrior than any baseline human could become because you taught me enhanced capabilities to peak effectiveness. That's not your failure. That's your success. What you're calling failure is my application of successful teaching to biological reality you won't acknowledge. Enhanced warriors are superior. That's a fact. Partnership pretends that fact doesn't exist. I'm proposing accepting fact operationally in a domain where fact determines survival. You taught me to win. I won in 2834. 47 enemies killed, 3 friendly casualties, military objective achieved, future attacks prevented. The partnership called it a massacre. I call it a decisive victory exactly as you taught. Now I'm attempting to formalize military autonomy, so enhanced warriors can win consistently without partnership constraints that prevent effective defense. That's not betraying your teaching. That's honoring your teaching by applying it without institutional handicaps that make superior capability suboptimal through constitutional equality. The burden of teaching. Korrath confronted the truth. Lugal named, teaching had worked precisely as designed. The student had learned perfectly. Enhanced capability had been developed optimally. The problem wasn't teaching quality, it was teaching applied to biological inequality, creating dominance that teaching assumed wouldn't happen when strength was defended against weakness. I taught assuming warriors would use strength to protect communities from comparable threats, Korrath said. Didn't account for genetic modification creating warriors far superior to threats they'd face. Assumed strength serving the weak meant protecting baseline populations from external dangers. You're using strength claiming to protect enhanced populations from partnership constraints, treating protection of enhanced efficiency as equivalent to protection of baseline vulnerability. That's not what I taught, even though it follows logically from what I taught. That's weapons being used for purposes the teacher didn't intend, but that teaching enabled anyway. I'm responsible for providing capability. You're responsible for how capability is applied. Both true. Both matters. Both create this crisis where good teaching enables bad outcomes through students applying lessons the teacher meant for a different context. Lugal considered this, so what do you want from me? Abandon military autonomy because you regret teaching effectively? Subordinate enhanced capability to partnership constraints because biology makes constraints unjust? Continue pretending constitutional equality creates operational equality when demonstrably it doesn't? I want you to choose partnership consciously, Korrath replied. Recognize that enhanced superiority exists while refusing to formalize superiority into hierarchy. Accept that biological advantage creates an efficiency temptation, while resisting it because formalizing advantage destroys partnership. Protecting both populations better than enhanced autonomy would protect enhanced populations alone. You're right that enhanced warriors are superior. You're wrong that superiority justifies autonomy. Those are both true. Wrestling with both truths is what partnership requires, acknowledging biological reality while refusing to let biology determine political structure. That's asking me to accept permanent inefficiency for philosophical principle, Lugal said. Yes, Korrath agreed. That's exactly what partnership asks. And I'm asking you to choose partnership despite efficiency temptation because I'm responsible for creating temptation through teaching that made your capability so decisive. The confrontation ended without resolution. The teacher requested that the student limit the capability that the teacher had developed. Still, the student refused to subordinate it to the principal teacher, who couldn't defend beyond an appeal to partnership philosophy. The student was rejected as naive. Coup planning continued. The coup attempt. Military mobilization. Lugal mobilized enhanced forces 3 days after Korrath's confrontation, 200 enhanced warriors representing the majority of Uruk's military capability, coordinated through enhanced communication networks. Partnership governance couldn't intercept quickly enough to prevent mobilization. The objective was limited. An enhanced military compound would declare autonomy from partnership oversight, operate independently while maintaining cooperation with partnership governance in non-military domains, demonstrate enhanced capability through professional operations that partnership constraints prevented, and prove military autonomy served both populations better than partnership governance served anyone. Not a political coup attempting complete control. Domain-specific autonomy in an area where biological advantage was decisive. The constitutional framework remains intact, except that military operations are exempt from partnership consent requirements. Moderate proposal compared to complete consolidation. But moderacy made it dangerous, appearing reasonable while establishing precedent for enhanced autonomy in any domain where capability advantages existed. Baseline response. Mira mobilized the Partnership Council response, emergency session authorizing baseline military forces to prevent enhanced autonomy through force if necessary, recognizing that military confrontation between enhanced and baseline forces would produce catastrophic casualties, demonstrating exactly what biological hierarchy meant when violence was real. 200 enhanced warriors versus 400 baseline warriors. Enhanced processing advantage versus baseline numerical advantage. Enhanced coordination versus baseline determination. Biology versus numbers. Capability versus commitment. Mathematics favored enhanced victory. Casualty ratios from past conflicts showed enhanced forces consistently achieving 4-to-1 advantages. 400 baseline warriors meant 100 enhanced equivalent combat capability. 200 enhanced warriors meant 800 baseline equivalent combat capability. But partnership meant baseline forces would fight despite the mathematical certainty of catastrophic losses. Would die preventing enhanced autonomy, even knowing they'd lose militarily. Would sacrifice themselves, demonstrating that partnership mattered more than survival when hierarchy threatened constitutional equality. Korrath's intervention. The immortal teacher stops his student. Korrath materialized at the military compound entrance as enhanced forces prepared defensive positions. Immortal warrior confronting an enhanced warrior he'd trained, the teacher physically intervening to prevent the student from implementing the teaching through a coup. The teacher opposed. The confrontation was physical rather than philosophical, 54,000 years of immortal combat capability versus 47 years of enhanced human capability, immortal strength versus enhanced coordination, teacher's guilt versus student's conviction. Lugal recognized immediately, "You're stopping me physically. Not arguing philosophically anymore. Using force, you taught me to respect. To prevent me from using force, you taught me to apply." Yes, Korrath confirmed, quantum-locked body positioning to prevent Lugal's advance without harming the student he still cared for despite opposing the coup. "I taught you everything except when not to fight. Taught you strength serves weak without teaching you that strength claiming to serve enhanced efficiency while subordinating baseline populations isn't serving weak, it's serving strong disguised as protection. That's my failure. Now I'm correcting failure through force because philosophical argument failed to convince you what I failed to teach you initially, that capability without ethical constraint becomes tyranny regardless of intentions." Teacher versus student combat. Lugal attacked, knowing he couldn't win, but needing to test whether the teacher's intervention was absolute. Enhanced reflexes against immortal speed, enhanced coordination against immortal experience, biological advantage against quantum-enabled capability that made biological advantage irrelevant. The combat lasted 17 seconds by partnership observers' timekeeping. Lugal struck first, enhanced processing enabling faster than baseline tactical response, weapons moving with precision, Korrath's training had optimized. Korrath deflected without damaging immortal capability making enhanced speed appear slow, immortal experience reading attack patterns the student hadn't varied from training doctrine, the teacher's knowledge of the student's capability enabling perfect counter without harm. Lugal adapted enhanced cognition processing combat data, adjusting tactics, attempting innovations that teachers might not predict. Korrath adjusted simultaneously, immortal processing vastly superior to enhanced processing, tactical creativity from 50,000 years of combat experience eclipsing enhanced innovation from 47 years of life. Lugal attempted a final committed strike, recognition that testing couldn't continue indefinitely, that teacher's superiority was absolute, that demonstration needed ending with the student acknowledging the teacher's dominance before the enhanced warriors decided to attack the immortal protecting partnership. Korrath disarmed without injury, quantum locked strength removing weapon, immortal speed positioning Lugal into submission, hold that enhanced reflexes couldn't escape, teacher demonstrating capability hierarchy that made enhanced superiority to baseline humans appear trivial compared to immortal superiority to enhanced humans. The combat ended with Lugal restrained but unharmed, enhanced warriors witnessing immortal dominance that made clear exactly how hierarchy worked when capability differences were sufficiently significant. Even enhanced warriors were subordinate to immortals whose biology made enhanced biology appear baseline by comparison. The lesson delivered. This is what you're proposing, Korrath said, maintaining hold without causing pain, demonstrating dominance without exercising cruelty. Enhanced warriors governing baseline populations through biological superiority. I just demonstrated an immortal governing enhanced warrior through biological superiority. You experienced subordination based on a capability hierarchy. It felt unjust, even though I'm physically superior. That's what baseline populations experience when you propose military autonomy, subordination based on biology they can't change, hierarchy justified by capability they can't match, governance determined by advantages they didn't choose. You don't like being subordinate to me, even though I'm a demonstrably superior combatant. Baseline populations don't like being subordinate to you, even though you're demonstrably a superior coordinator. Both positions are logically identical. Both involve a biological advantage that translates into political authority. Both are unjust, even though capability differences are fundamental. Partnership exists so no one experiences subordination based on biology. I'm stopping the coup because allowing it normalizes the hierarchy that you just experienced personally and recognized as unjust, despite my capability superiority being absolute. Baseline populations deserve the same protection from your superiority that you deserve from my superiority. That's the partnership principle. That's what I failed to teach you initially. That's what I'm teaching through force now. Lugal absorbed lessons through embodied experience rather than abstract principle, feeling subordination personally rather than justifying it philosophically, recognizing the injustice of hierarchy when experiencing a disadvantaged position rather than advocating it from an advantaged position. You could have taught this lesson without the coup, Lugal said from submission hold. I tried, Korrath replied. You didn't learn through argument what required experiencing personally. Sometimes teaching requires demonstration rather than explanation. That's my failure too, assuming a philosophical argument would convince when embodied experience was necessary. I taught you combat through practice. It should have taught ethics through practice, too. This is the practice lesson in why capability doesn't justify hierarchy, because experiencing hierarchy from a subordinate position reveals injustice that can't be seen from a superior position. Korrath released Lugal, combat ended, lesson delivered, coup prevented, through the teacher demonstrating the capability hierarchy, making the student's proposed hierarchy visible as an injustice that the student could recognize through personal experience. The aftermath. Partnership Council Emergency Session. The council convened, with a coup attempt prevented, but underlying tensions unresolved. Enhanced military forces stood down, baseline forces withdrew, and a constitutional crisis was averted through an immortal intervention that couldn't be relied upon for future crises. Mira spoke for baseline populations. Coup attempt proves biological pressure toward consolidation persists despite constitutional frameworks. Lugal mobilized 200 enhanced warriors, seeking military autonomy without the partners' consent. Korrath stopped the coup through force. But Korrath won't always be available. Partnership can't rely on immortal intervention to prevent enhanced consolidation. The question is, what institutional changes would prevent future coup attempts? Military reforms after the 2834 massacre were insufficient. Lugal planned a coup despite the reforms, leveraging capabilities that those reforms couldn't constrain. Enhanced military superiority remains real. Partnership governance attempting to manage superiority remains inadequate. Different approach needed. And key to added enhanced perspective, Lugal attempted through force what I attempted through constitutional amendment 4 years ago. Both failed. But 73 representatives voted for the consolidation amendment. 200 warriors mobilized for military autonomy. Support for enhanced control is growing, not declining, despite partnership institutions attempting to prevent consolidation. Biological pressure toward hierarchy persists because biology creates advantages that institutions acknowledge but can't eliminate. Each crisis tests a partnership. Each test partnership survives through intervention, constitutional voting, immortal force, and emergency measures. But survival through crisis management isn't a sustainable long-term strategy. Eventually, a partnership needs to accept biological reality rather than attempting to constrain reality indefinitely. Tribunal judgment. Partnership Council Tribunal judged Lugal's coup attempt, requiring punishment, demonstrating enhanced military autonomy, and violating constitutional frameworks. Lugal was stripped of military command. Prohibited from military service for 20 years and required to train baseline warriors in enhanced tactical methods to democratize military knowledge, which warriors currently monopolize. The judgment attempted to balance punishing coup attempt while recognizing biological advantages that motivated the attempt, preventing Lugal from an immediate military role while utilizing his capability for partnership benefit, demonstrating that enhanced superiority didn't exempt from partnership accountability. But the balance was unstable. Enhanced military leadership resisted punishment for attempting what many privately supported. Baseline populations feared that insufficient consequences would enable future attempts. Hybrids recognized tribunal compromise satisfied neither population while claiming to serve both. Korrath's public testimony. Taking responsibility. Korrath testified at the tribunal, taking responsibility for the student's coup attempt. I taught Lugal everything he knows about combat. Taught him that strength must defend the weak. Taught him that decisive victory prevents future conflict. Taught him that a warrior's duty is to protect the community. All true principles. All correctly applied. All producing coup attempts I opposed because I taught capability without teaching an ethical framework to constrain it. That's my failure. The student learned what the teacher taught, applied teaching correctly. Produced outcomes that the teacher didn't intend, but that teaching enabled. I'm responsible for providing the capability that the coup attempt demonstrated. Lugal's responsible for choosing how to apply capability toward purposes I oppose. Both responsible. Both are at fault. Both created a crisis that the partnership barely survived through my intervention against the student I trained so effectively. He nearly destroyed the partnership I meant to protect. The testimony shifted blame from the student alone to teacher-student shared responsibility. Teaching enabled, learning implemented, both contributed to the coup attempt that partnership governance hadn't prevented before the immortal force intervened. Lugal responded from the defendant's position. The teacher taught me to win. I almost won. That's his legacy, effective teaching producing capable students. The teacher opposed my goal. But teaching enabled my attempt. Can't separate good teaching from students' application of teaching to purposes the teacher opposes. That's the nature of teaching, capability transfers regardless of the teacher's intentions for its use. Korrath feels guilty. I don't blame him. He taught excellently. I learned perfectly. Applied learning toward a goal he opposes. His guilt is accepting that good teaching can lead to outcomes the teacher doesn't intend. My responsibility is to accept that capable action produces consequences, and that partnership punishes, despite the capability justifying the action biologically. We're both right. Both wrong. Both responsible. That's the complexity of partnership, navigating teacher enabling student, student applying teaching, both creating crisis, neither solely caused. Partial reconciliation. Tribunal concluded with Korrath and Lugal acknowledging shared responsibility without fully reconciling philosophical differences. Korrath, I'm sorry I taught you strength without wisdom about when strength shouldn't be applied. But you chose how to use what I gave you. That's your agency. Your responsibility. Your choice. Lugal, you taught me to win. I almost did. That's your legacy. Effective teaching produces capable students who apply what they have learned toward goals that the teacher opposes. I accept punishment. Don't accept that attempting military autonomy was wrong, given the biological reality that the partnership won't acknowledge. You stopped me through superior force. Partnership punishes me through institutional authority. Neither proves enhanced military superiority shouldn't be formalized operationally. Partial reconciliation acknowledging both shared responsibility while maintaining philosophical disagreement about whether biological advantage justifies political hierarchy, teacher accepting teaching enabled without endorsing application, student accepting defeat without abandoning conviction that enhanced superiority justified autonomy attempt. Military reform proposal. Integrated command structure. Korrath proposed comprehensive military reform, attempting to prevent future coup attempts while acknowledging biological advantages that motivated attempts. Integrated command framework. Military command requires both enhanced and baseline co-commanders for all operations. Enhanced commander provides tactical coordination. Baseline commander provides ethical oversight. Neither can authorize operations without others' consent. Enhanced coordination advantages applied to tactical execution. Biology determines capability. Capability determines operational effectiveness. Baseline ethical judgment applied to strategic decisions. Humanity determines whether objectives justify methods, and partnership values constrain how biological advantages are employed. Both capabilities are necessary. Neither is sufficient alone. Enhanced tactical brilliance without a baseline ethical constraint leads to massacres like 2834. Baseline ethical oversight without enhanced tactical capability leads to defeats that unnecessarily cost lives. Integration combines advantages while constraining excesses each population is prone to when operating independently. The proposal attempted to institutionalize the lesson Korrath had taught Lugal through physical demonstration, that capability doesn't justify autonomy, that biological advantages require ethical constraints, that enhanced superiority creates responsibility for how superiority is applied rather than justification for autonomous application. Training program restructuring. Military training now requires ethics evaluation before tactical instruction. Warriors must demonstrate understanding of restraint, proportionality, and partnership values before receiving advanced combat training. Strength without restraint is tyranny. I taught strength without adequately teaching restraint. That produced a student capable of a coup attempt. New training ensures capability comes with an ethical framework that constrains it toward partnership purposes rather than individual or population-specific purposes. Lugal will participate in a new training program, teaching baseline warriors enhanced tactical methods while learning from baseline warriors' ethical frameworks his enhanced processing didn't develop adequately. Mutual teaching. Mutual learning. Mutual dependence that partnership requires, but that previous training structure didn't enforce. The consolidation probability increases. Nix's assessment. Nix presented probability recalculation showing the coup attempt's effect on partnership survival. Partnership survival, post-coup attempt. Next 50 years, 64%, down from 68% post-sharer death. Next 100 years, 49%, down from 54% until genetic integration. 8 generations, 34%, down from 39%. Coup attempt reduces partnership survival probability 5% because enhanced military mobilization proves biological pressure toward consolidation exceeds institutional capacity to prevent consolidation attempts. Korrath stopped the coup through immortal intervention. But an immortal intervention isn't a sustainable governance strategy, can't rely on immortals physically preventing enhanced autonomy attempts every time biological advantages create consolidation temptation. Pattern emerging, constitutional amendment, failed 73-92, military coup, prevented by force, economic consolidation, likely next attempt, infrastructure monopoly, following economic consolidation, administrative efficiency, final domain. Each attempt brings consolidation closer to success, either through institutional exhaustion, partnership too tired resisting to maintain resistance, or through domain-specific successes creating precedents for complete consolidation. The mathematical trajectory shows the partnership survival probability dropping below 50% within the current generation. Either genetic integration eliminates biological hierarchy faster than expected, or political consolidation formalizes hierarchy before integration completes, or something changes variables that mathematics models using current trends. The race accelerates. Kronos absorbed data with recognition that the efficiency he'd advocated for decades was losing to the equity partnership demanded. Partnership is exhausting. Requires constant resistance to biological pressure that could be accepted through formalization. Enhanced populations are frustrated by constraints on the advantages they possess naturally. Baseline populations are fearful of the subordination that would result from formalizing advantages. Both populations were tired of conflict requiring continuous conscious choice against biological convenience. Lugal's coup proves that exhaustion creates vulnerability. Enhanced frustration produces consolidation attempts. Baseline fear produces resistance requiring immortal intervention. Partnership survives a crisis but depletes resources for surviving the next crisis. Eventually, soon mathematically, resources will be exhausted before genetic integration eliminates hierarchy naturally. The question is whether the partnership can last for 8 more generations when the current generation has already exhausted itself after 4 generations. Mathematics suggests no unless something fundamental changes about how partnership manages biological inequality. Epilogue: the pressure remains. 6 months after coup, Lugal served a tribunal sentence, trained baseline warriors, and learned ethical constraints, demonstrating that enhanced capability could be shared even though biological processing advantages couldn't be transferred. Military reforms implemented integrated command structures, ethics evaluation requirements, partnership oversight strengthened, and military advisors more involved in preventing consolidation rather than merely observing. But underlying tensions persisted. Enhanced military frustration that biological advantages were institutionally constrained. Baseline military recognition that constraints were inadequate, preventing enhanced dominance. Hybrid exclusion from the military domain, where enhanced advantages were most decisive and baseline determination most valued, leaving hybrids nowhere to contribute militarily. The coup attempt had failed. But failure didn't eliminate biological pressure toward consolidation. Didn't reduce enhanced advantages, making autonomy attractive. Didn't increase baseline capabilities, making the partnership operationally equal. Didn't solve fundamental problem. Biology created a hierarchy that partnership acknowledged philosophically while attempting to prevent politically. Institutions constrained advantages that genetics created naturally. Constitutional equality required continuous conscious choice against biological convenience. Partnership continued. Tested. Constrained. Exhausting both populations through requiring constant resistance to a hierarchy that biology made easier than equality. The consolidation pressure remained. The biological inequality persisted. The race between genetic integration and political formalization accelerated. Lugal's coup attempt had been prevented. But the next attempt was inevitable. The question was whether the partnership survived long enough for genetic integration to eliminate hierarchy naturally, or whether biological pressure exceeded institutional resistance before integration was completed. Time would answer. Mathematics suggested time was running out. End of chapter 15. The coup fails. Democracy survives. Not through military strength but through constitutional legitimacy. That force cannot prevail when populations collectively refuse to grant authority. Korrath experiences a crisis of conscience. 50,000 years of teaching warfare. Never taught why restraint matters. Never taught when the capability shouldn't be used. Taught how to fight. Didn't teach when not fighting matters more. Amendment 3 emerges from crisis, technology access rights ensuring baseline populations receive defensive equipment before enhanced forces receive offensive capability. Preventing military advantages from determining political outcomes. But military consolidation addressed reveals another population demanding recognition. In Chapter 16, the Hybrid Summit, hybrid populations claim self-determination. Not tools. not mediators serving others. Beings choosing freely. Amendment 6 proposed. Liberation demanded. Join us next time.